and welcome back to the Rachel Unpacked Podcast. Again, I am your host, Rachel Medina. I am super excited and honored to have this wonderful woman that I had the pleasure of meeting at the Women's Leadership Conference. We were both keynote speakers at this event, and it was actually my first introduction to her, and I was absolutely wowed. Let me tell you, I was a little intimidated. I had to speak after her. Talk about no pressure whatsoever. I am talking about Lena NASSERDEEN, and she is a two-time TedX speaker. When I tell you, no pressure, right? Best-selling author and the CEO of Rise Up For You, helping people develop their personal confidence and professional confidence. Nada, welcome to the Rachel Unpacked Podcast. Introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here. It's such a pleasure to just be here to educate, to empower. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I mean, you said it all. I'm Lena NASSERDEEN, the CEO and founder of Rise Up For You, two-time TEDx speaker. Really just love to share. So I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. So what I usually do is I go down this journey of your personal story. First and foremost, we want to really share with the women listening what that looks like to even decide to do what you are doing, specifically in leadership, specifically entrepreneurship. There are a lot of women that are listening that have the idea somewhat that they want to do more with their lives, but they don't know how. At the Rachel Unpacked Podcast, we lead them to the SHE E00 platform, which gives them ideas of what they can do. And so it all, though, ties back to mindset and confidence and the belief that you could even know what's possible, right? So share with us your journey. Like, how did this all begin with you and your ability to have confidence and to go for it?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. And you're right. I mean, I know we hear it a lot that more and more it sounds like, okay, we get it about mindset, but it is just so true. I mean, I realized that. So my first career, I was a performer. I used to tour internationally around the world as a singer and a dancer. And that's when I really realized that it wasn't necessarily about talent, but about tenacity. So I would walk into a room with, 300-400 people that were amazing singers, amazing dancers. Like they were all highly technically advanced when it came to singing, dancing, and performing. But yet I always got the center stage spot. I was always like the diva solo, but I was never the best singer ever. So there were always men and women in the room that can completely sing me out of the water. They had a 3.5 octave range. I had a 2.5 octave range. They had parents that were celebrities. I just sang in my garage growing up. And yet I always got that spot. And I started to think, like, this is really interesting because she's actually a way better singer. Why did I get the solo, right? You kind of start to explore and understand. And then I went on to become an executive. So when I was 27, I went into the corporate workplace and I became an executive at 27 years old for 200 members. And I saw the same thing. So highly functioning, really solid professionals that had PhDs, master's degrees, bachelor's, a ton of certifications. They were getting in their own way, but they had all the talent they needed, right? They had all the technical skill. They had everything they needed to be successful, yet they felt unfulfilled. They couldn't find their purpose or their why. They were really struggling with communication because remember, the person is the professional is the person. Like they're not disconnected as much as we like to say they are. They are not. We're all one. So they were really just sabotaging themselves and getting in their own way. And that's when I really started to explore, okay, what makes some organizations and some professionals move further faster? Especially if I'm looking at a resume and I have 2 resumes or 2 coaches or 2 entrepreneurs, call it what you want, that have the same technical skill. How come one is moving further faster and finding more success?
Yeah.
What are the common denominators that go beyond just having the technical skill? Because the reality is that in today's world, everybody has the technical skills in your industry, right? Whatever industry you're in, if you're a real estate agent, you all know how to sell real estate the same, right? If you're a coach, you have your methods. If you're a doctor, you have your methods. But what makes you different and what makes you stand out and go further faster? It's definitely not just the technical skill.
You know what? I love that you're touching on so many key points because even with myself, I mean, the whole show is called Rachel Unpacked because as a corporate leader myself, over 20 years, I found that whenever we would have our Monday team meetings, we would bring issues to the table only with the intention to identify a solution quickly, but we would unpack it. And sometimes, or sometime along that journey, I had to ask myself and unpack things within myself, because people would say, how'd you do that? How are you here? Everyone has these degrees from USC, but yet you're leading the team. What do you think that is? And so I've never really been able to sort of put my finger on it until I started watching your content, listening to what you were saying. And I thought, that's it. Like, that is it. There is this desire to want to learn. There's a recognition and an honesty of like, I don't know how to do that, but I can figure it out. And I think a lot of people that have the education, or maybe they feel entitled, or like you said, the celebrity parents or whatever, they're not always willing maybe to figure it out. Do you think that that's what that is? I just know for myself, I wasn't the most talented. I wasn't the smartest. I wasn't the most experienced, but I was willing to figure it out.
Yeah, the biggest thing, and this is what I talk about in my book, macro versus micro confidence. So the biggest thing is that it's not necessarily that people aren't willing to figure it out. They don't believe they can figure it out,
Yes.
right? Where for you, you bet on and you believed in you, right?
Yes.
Not in the degree. You bet on and you believed in you and
Right.
your ability to learn and your ability to fall and make mistakes and get back up. And this is what I say, micro versus macro confidence. Most individuals built a micro confidence, meaning that they're confident in a skill, right? And I talked about this when I spoke on stage. We're taught our entire life to get good grades and to do well in these little subjects, right? Like get good grades in math, science, history, blah, 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 blah. Then you go on to university and then you get a degree in a certain subject or a skill. Then you go on into the workforce and then you get a title and you get a salary and you get all of these things. And we start to define ourselves by micro level confidence.
Yes.
The challenge is that micro level confidence is not sustainable because it exists outside of you. So when, a pandemic happens, and all of a sudden you lose the job title, you lose the job, you lose the business. When artificial intelligence comes in and now all of these jobs are going away because they're replacing it with the robot, you have to have the macro level confidence, which is an inner belief that you can learn. You have to have the macro confidence that says, even when you lose everything, you still have everything in order to thrive and succeed. And when COVID hit, there were so many professionals that just said, who am I? What's my identity? What value do I bring to the world? Because this whole time they've been building their self-worth based off of this micro level, and it's just not sustainable. And I always say it's the greatest tragedy today. We asked thousands of professionals a year ago, working professionals, entrepreneurs, executives, entry level, what their number one challenge was. 83% said self-confidence. 83%. That's massive, massive.
Wow.
And it's because we haven't been taught that macro level, that when you fall, fine. Failure is research to success, right? Perfectionism is actually a preventer of your potential. It's understanding that, again, you are enough simply because you exist. And even if you don't have the answer right then and there, you're going to bet on and believe in you to learn it. And that is really the key.
So what's amazing about that is on the show, I talk about done is better than perfect. And one of the things that I really had to adopt, I was a magazine publisher for a lot of years. I actually still own a magazine today. And when I first got into the space, I would sit there and hover behind all of the artists, what they were typesetting the editorial. And I would say, move this and tweak that and change this and change that. And I remember one of the owners of a magazine that I was in charge of years ago, he said, Rachel, it's just a magazine, like it's fine. And I had to learn to let go of that professionalism or perfectionism, and to be able to say, okay, done is better than perfect. And not to say, oh, we're going to half-ass it, right? But to really lead with the best foot forward, but to recognize that moment of like, done is better than perfect, keep the ball rolling. Another thing that you mentioned is about, being separate from like our accomplishments and being able to face what COVID taught us, which is we are not what we do. But then in the United States, because I've traveled through Europe and everything, and they have a really great ability to separate this, it seems like, where here in the United States, we are what we do. And one of the things that COVID taught me was I had built this amazing business called Just Home, whatever. My claim to fame was this ability to build this business from home over the age of 40 after divorce as a single mom. Again, did it from home. And then COVID hit, business completely comes to a grinding halt. And I'm sitting here going, oh man, like I'm in my 40s. My claim to fame has just like the faucet is off. And now what do I do? Like, now what do I do? And I'm a woman of faith. So, of course, I prayed on it and all of that. And then here came the DMs, the text messages, people listening to the show going, Rachel, you built this business, but like now I'm home and my kids are running around, but like I know I can do something else. Like, how can I do that? And suddenly the answer came, and I had the confidence to go, oh, let's book a 1 hour like Zoom. Let's unpack this. And I had the confidence because why? Even though my business came to a halt and I could sit there and feel sorry for myself about this sort of crisis taking place of like, now what? Who am I if I'm not this publisher? And to be able to go, oh, but all of that information that I learned, not only in corporate America, but as an entrepreneur, as a mommypreneur, as a entrepreneur building a business from home, all of that has value. It just takes a different shape, it takes a different form. And so for us, SHEEO was born out of it, right? For us, it's this whole like women's empowerment, guiding women to be able to go from, zero to LLC in like 30 days and all these things. So I love that you're going down this path. I love that this is what you do, because my experience is so many women, they need this. They need this.
Yeah, and it's also allowing yourself to shift. Okay, awesome. You had this incredible business and then COVID hit. Great. What's the next step? And I think sometimes we get stuck in, that was me, that's who I am. And it's like, well, whatever happened to just growing with life? Okay, like I was a performer. Great. Then I became an executive. I was an executive. Great. That's what I did. Now I'm an entrepreneur and I run my business. I don't know what I'm going to be in 5 years from now, but I'm okay with that, because that's part of life and that's part of the journey. And just allowing yourself to have self-compassion for change,
Yes.
have self-compassion for change. And a lot of times things happen to us and then we just get stuck. We're like, no, I can't. This is who I am. This is what people see me as. Where it's like, but what if they can see you as something else now, a new and a different, beautiful, evolved you? And that's the journey of life. And I think that's also a control thing that humans have, right? It's like they want to have certainty and like understand every aspect and control of their life, but life just doesn't work that way, right? Life doesn't work that way. And I think the quicker we're able to just be like, cool, I'm just going to do what life's going to throw at me, right? The quicker we get back up, the quicker we bounce back, the quicker we just move forward.
I think that what's amazing about that lesson in life, when you get really good at bouncing, I think there was like an episode I did season 2 where I was like, oh, I bounce really well. If I fall, it's like, oh, I am going to bounce, and I don't always know where. I just know it's going to be higher than I've ever bounced before. Yeah. And I joke about it, but let me tell you something. I think that in this journey of like self-confidence, or, identifying what your sort of gems are within you, you got to have an amazing ability to bounce, because of, like you said, there's too often I've met brilliant women that I think they're doing brilliant things today, but they're still they're not, you could talk about the past and but there's a way that they're articulating it as if there's like a loss, or like their identity is still like, oh, I used to live in this house, or I used to drive these cars, or I used to date this guy, or like, and there's something with that where I'm like, okay, but today, like, that's great. Like, that's a wonderful sort of precursor to what shaped you and molded you to who you are today. But to become more proud of who you are today, and also give yourself permission, like you said, to shift. I feel so relieved that I am breaking up, by the way, with that business. The business that I was afraid to not have, because I didn't know what that was going to mean for my identity, or the respect or the soft power I commanded if I entered a room, because like, oh, she's, the publisher, blah, blah, blah. Now that I'm sort of breaking up with it and all these, I feel so free. And now that I see all this other newness evolving, I feel so incredibly free. Do you have anything to say about that? Not only more of the bounce, but also the breaking up with the things that no longer serve us, even professionally.
Yeah, this conversation is really important because I can tell you, we coach executives all over the world, we're entrepreneurs, you name it. And I can't tell you how many times I have this conversation where I ask this one question. And if everybody listening, listen to this one question. If today you lost everything, no car, no job, no money, it was just you in a room by yourself, who are you? Can you tell me who you are? Without giving me a role, right? Without saying, well, I'm a mom. No, that's a role. Who are you? Well, I'm a wife and a sister. No, that's a role. Who are you? You would be surprised to this date. Every single person that I've ever asked that to has said, give me a week. Give me a week or two till I come back to my next coaching session. I can't answer that right now.
Oh, wow.
I can't answer that right now. Right. And you're absolutely right. I love what I do. I love Rise Up For You. It's an amazing thing that has been able to be created and cultivated, with myself and with my team. But if God forbid something happened tomorrow to it, that doesn't mean I'm not worthy. That doesn't mean I'm not, kind and successful. That means that the chapter of that story has now closed and I get to create a new chapter because I have understood that those things don't define me. Like, let's go back a little bit. So when I first started this company, I started it because of a pain, right? So I was an executive. I had a house on the lake, brand new luxury car, all these things that we think are successful, And then I resigned from the company and I sold all of my stuff and I moved out of the country to get married. And on the first day of the honeymoon, my husband said he wanted a divorce, that he decided he didn't want to be married anymore. So literally within a couple weeks, I lost everything. I went from a high functioning executive to a house, blah, 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 to literally $100 and 2 luggage. Wow. Not to mention like a shattered heart, confusion, like, oh, like, is this a joke? What just happened?
Yeah.
Get back on a plane and I'm crying. I fall asleep. My father came to me on the plane because he had passed away a few years prior. And he said to me, Netta, everything you need, you already have inside of you. You just have to rise up for you. That's the name of the company, the book, Rise Up For You, right? So that came to me. I'm like, okay. I got back home to California. I just started building. I had no idea what I was building. So I was like, okay, I'm going to build Rise Up For You. All I know is the name, Rise Up For You. What it is, but I bet on and I believe in me. And I started building. 3 months later, my second parent, my mom, was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer out of nowhere. We've never had cancer in our family. The first year of building Rise Up For You, I built it out of a hospital. I took showers at the 24-hour fitness across the street. I ran back to the hospital. I would open up a laptop. How do you build a business? How do you build a website? What's a podcast and how do you build? And I just started researching because I believe on and I bet on me. But the reality is that when I was 31 years old, I had to start from scratch and I lost both parents, the most important thing to me. And I remember standing in the closet. I was the only girl in the family. I am the only girl in the family. I inherited all my mom's clothes, all of her Louis Vuitton bags, all of her jewelry. And I remember just standing there and thinking like, this means nothing to me. I could care less about all of this stuff. And that's when I asked the question, what does it mean to live a life that you are proud of? And since then, the entire company, everything we do, it always comes down to what does it mean to build and live a life that you are proud of? Yeah. And that is it. And that is the most powerful question that you can ask yourself so that you can become who you want to become. Now, today, people all the time like, oh, you're so successful. You have this company. You were on a billboard in Times Square last week. And I'm like, that's cool. But you know what I'm proud of? I'm proud of how I got back up as a woman. I'm part of the resilience that I have. I'm proud that I can look in the mirror and say that I've created things with integrity. Like that's the stuff that's successful to me. And nobody can take that away because that's internal. That's that macro level confidence that we're talking about, right? I'm proud that, I've gone through a lot of pain at a young age and I still feel happy and still have kept my faith with God and still feel connected to the people around me and, I don't compromise my values for anyone or anything. That is success to me. And I think there's so many people that are running away from that and trying to fill it with these things. And it just is not sustainable.
You know what? What a beautiful story. Thank you so much, for sharing that aspect of it, because so often as women, life is happening to us at the same time. I often say to people on my team or women that I'm talking to, when you're on this business building journey and you're on this journey of like making your dreams happen, it's like getting in a rocket ship, right? And you feel the burners going and it's a little bit turbulent. And when you're heading out into space, let me tell you what happens when you break through the ozone, all that. There's debris, there's stuff flying at you. It's called life. And life has so many blows, many of them of which are unpredictable. A divorce, I too went through a divorce after 20 years, and I felt blindsided, even though in hindsight you go, the red flags were everywhere. Right? Lost a son. There's just so many things that life happens, and you don't know what the debris is going to look like. But again, if you get really great at bouncing and you get really great at shedding what the symbols are to everyone else as far as what success means and what joy means and what peace is, for it's so different for everyone. I too, by the way, I broke up with the brands. I broke up with so many of these things that we kind of idolize in the world and everything. And as soon as I was able to just let go and say, I don't have to look perfect every time. I don't even have to feel great every time for me to show up. Like, I just know that I need to leap and step forward in the direction of my greater self, my happiness, my peace. And no matter what is happening around me, I could, like I said, feel sad. I could take a moment to just be like, oh my God, I miss my son, or whatever it is, and then get up and then get ready and then get out there. And it's about understanding that nothing is perfect. I think that's my takeaway from what you're saying. It's like, there is no perfect scenario, but all of it is working for your greater good. By the way, if you allow it to, it'll empower you and it'll fuel you to do such great things. And for everybody, it's a little different. Like I said, I know that for me, Deneen, who's my COO, we talk about this a lot over the last several years. It's like, it's so often to do for others what we don't do for ourselves. And so even myself, I'm guilty of that in so many ways. And so I had to now lean into a purpose-driven industry career path, because as long as I'm serving others, I can show up and I can show out. It's really difficult sometimes to do that for ourselves when you're talking about identity and things like that. But it's a lot easier to show up for others. And some people choose to show up in the world with the Louis Vuittons and the flashy things and saying, look at me and all that I've collected. For me personally and for others around me, it's like, no, what's the impact we can make in the world? What's the impact we can make in others? I'm not 100%. I'm not 100% healed. I'm not 100% where I want to be as a woman, whether it's physically, emotionally, or anything like that, financially even. But I can say, you know what? I have something because of my history, because of all that I've learned, and I can package it into a gem that I can pass to someone and they can run the ball, and that'll make me so happy and so like joyful enough to show up and say it's worth getting up every day and being the best version of myself today.
Well, there's two types of people. And what I'm hearing from you, there's one type of person, which I would say is the majority, where their pain pauses their potential.
Yes.
Because the reality is like every single person has a lot of pain and struggle that they've been through.
Yes.
And unfortunately, most people let that pain pause them. They let that pain prevent them from stepping into a beautiful future. It pauses their potential. It pauses their ability to be their best self. And then you have other people, which I would say are you, based off of the beautiful story that you've said, that you use your pain as fuel for growth, that you'll be damned if your pain's going to go to waste.
Yeah.
And you're like, I went through all this. I'm going to use it. I'm
Yes.
going to use it to make me the best version of me, and then to support and make an impact in the world. I'm going to take all of that and I'm going to use it, opposed to letting it just go to waste, right? And that's a decision that you've made. And that's a decision that everyone can make if they want to. but they have to make that decision for themselves. And you're right, it's not about being perfect. I mean, is there ever a day where we're like, yes, I've arrived?
No.
Like it's a constant journey with yourself as a woman, as a human being, as an entrepreneur, as a person. But you're absolutely right in that, in order to show up and give to others, you have to start with yourself. That's one thing that, I can really say about myself. When people ask me, like, what are your values? I say, God, number one, faith. And the second is me. And they're like, really? I'm like, yep. Because if I don't have me next, how can I be on this camera right now pouring my everything that I have? How can I give all the love that I can to my family? How do I even have the capacity to get on stage in front of thousands of people if I don't put me first? I put me first so that I can serve others to the best of my ability. And I really think sometimes people get that backwards. It just doesn't work that way.
Exactly. I saw a TikTok of a woman who was saying that she went through a divorce and that people were asking her, why does she now after divorce look better than when she was married? And she would, and by the way, I co-host a show with my friend Delia. It's a relationship show called Beauty is Our Fresh Lettuce. We talk about this in more detail, but
relationships, about love and relationships.
We go for it. Yeah. We talk
about I gotta listen to that one.
Yeah. Divorce, it's all the awkward TMI, we go for it there. But it's what's interesting when I saw her video is she was listing all of sort of the excuses of like, well, because the kids, and I had 2-3 kids, and I had the husband, and I had, in other words, all I heard was that she wasn't putting herself first, because I just keep thinking about the scenario that they say when you're on the airplane, right? If they're in an event that the airplane is going to do whatever, the oxygen mask is going to come down. And they say mothers, right, parents, put the oxygen mask on you first. And that's all I heard was that she just didn't do that. As much as I heard her say she gained the weight, or she would just not fix herself up. She didn't have it in her whole marriage, and then her marriage ended, not because of that, right? But she was just expressing this. And all I heard was I thought if she just would have understood that putting the oxygen mask on her and making sure that she's good and she's balanced and she's joyful and at peace, she could have shown up so much better as a mother, wife, daughter, neighbor, right? On so many levels. But I think as women, we feel guilty to do that. So what do you think that is?
It's exactly what you said. It's perfectionist mindset. It's the nurturer in us. It's a feeling guilt that we have to do all these things. It's the narrative, you know what I mean, that we've been programmed with in society for years and years. And it's the same narrative that men have when they're like, no, I'm the protector of the family. I have to provide. I have to make more money. I have to, right? Like we both have our sets of narratives that that society has put on us that I think we're evolving somewhat to try to break and shift and understand. But it also, again, it comes back down to that confidence of like, I have to do this, otherwise they won't blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I literally was just having a conversation about this with my girlfriend, who's a mom, who also runs a business. And she's like, I have to take this, otherwise, what if they don't hire me again, but I just had a kid? I'm like, stop.
Yeah.
Okay? Like, what's more important to you right now? And don't worry about whether or not they're going to like you because you say no, or whether or not you're going to you'll get the job, you'll get opportunities, right? But it's that narrative that we play in our mind that gets in our way. And then because of that, we don't make ourselves a priority. And the reality is you just have to commit. And I'm not a mom yet, and I don't have kids. So I'm only speaking from my clients, the experiences that have been around me, right? It's a very general point of view. It's not an experiential point of view. Mm-hmm. What I can say is that our whole entire life as women, we're getting a lot of stuff thrown at us, right? As a parent, as a mom, as a wife, as a sibling, as a caretaker for our parents as we get older, which is pretty common, especially in different cultures, and making money and being nurturer, and we have to be feminine, but at the same time be masculine in the workplace so that we can climb the career ladder. Yes. All of this stuff, like in a world where all of that exists, we have to understand that we need to be a priority, just like that 1 o'clock meeting that's on the calendar with the boss. And unless we put a system in place for life, we're not going to be able to do that. So waking up a little bit early so that you can have 30 minutes of you time. Yeah. Tell your husband and your kids, I love you. Mommy loves you so much. But between this time and this time, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to work out and I'm going to come back and spend my time with you. But that 45 minutes is for me, and also like you're teaching your kids that.
Yep.
You're teaching your kids that they need me time too, and that they need to take care of themselves too, right? And that's the best thing that you can do. But we have to put ourselves in the calendar just like we put everything else in the calendar. If you look at my scheduler, every Sunday, I schedule my entire week starting at 6:00 in the morning. I spend time with myself. I, show gratitude. I pray to God. I write in my journal. I work out. I play with my puppy. I sit and I enjoy my cup of coffee. Then I jump into work. And then I end and maybe I'll work out again. I'll do things for myself. I'll talk with my family. I'll go out with my friends. But I'm really conscious about always creating that boundary, because again, what's life if you're not enjoying it? And if you're not enjoying yourself in the larger scheme, like what's the whole point of everything and why we exist here? And I think that's really important for women to understand.
I love that you're touching on that. I had a wonderful conversation with the woman on a previous episode, and she was talking about her life kind of being in chaos as a working mom, especially as a business building mother and wife, until she said, okay, these systems and processes that I use for my career, which she has an awesome career, she put them into the home, and all the way down to like everyone in the family has access to the calendar. She has different color coded calendars, which I myself also did. And as my boys got older, they would see the calendar, and everybody on my team could see the calendar. So whether it was personal or not, a doctor's appointment or church, it didn't matter. It was on my calendar. Everyone is in sync and aware of like, okay, these time blocks, she's good. These time blocks, don't even text her. And the ability to be able to manage the both sides of your life, or all sides of your life, to be able to say, hey, listen, all of it deserves its moment. And you're at work today, and from this time to this time, it deserves its moment. This is your high output time, right? But when you're at home with your spouse, or with your children, that's their moment separately. By the way, this is my child's moment. Maybe you have a son and a daughter. This is my daughter's moment. This is my son's moment. This is our moment together. Like getting super intentional and hyper aware of that, because there's CEOs, Fortune 500 CEOs all around the world, Jeff Bezos, Warren Buffett, you name it, they have the same amount of hours in a day that we do. And all these women, right, Mackenzie and all these different women, and like we're in chaos over our same amount of time. So it's like budgeting, right? And making sure that if you budget it correctly, everybody can get their moment, and including you. And I think for myself, the greatest thing that I started doing last year and now into this year was getting very clear on my intentions. Even created a workbook that everybody listening has already heard about called the intentions workbook. To just really understand your core intentions, the core areas of your life. But for me, the game changer really has been that sitting still with myself. I never did that. Like I never ever did that. I just this morning got my coffee, went outside in the sunlight and just sat. And I do that every morning now. My eyes get sunlight, like I get fresh air, the birds. I'm like, oh, look, there's a little bird making a nest. Like it's just being. And granted, I'm like praying in my mind and everything, but it's just like that silent time for myself. No mute. Like I'm literally like, I'm not on my phone. I'm just there sipping I'm having coffee with God. It's kind of what I'm kind of recalling it right now.
I love that.
My morning coffee with God. I'm like, I got to write a book about this. And I'm just being, and I'm 47 years old. It's the first time in my entire life that I've paused to just be. And I don't know, let's see where it goes.
100%. And I would even say, the quickest way to find out is ask yourself, what are your top 5 values in life? What are your top 5 values? And what's the order? Is it, God, you, what is it? Is it a God, career, hanging out with friends? And most people, their career and their job is going to probably be number 4 or 5 on the list. So then that means that their values are not in integrity with their actions on a day-to-day basis. And we get to make that shift, right? And this blows people's minds, because you're like, well, I actually put myself as number 2, and I put my family as number 3, and I put my husband or my wife as number 4, and I put my career as number 5. And I'm like, awesome. How often do you spend in your career? What percentage of the week? 95%. I'm like, interesting that 95% is going to the fifth thing on your value list, and they're like, oh my God, you're right. And then they can reallocate the percentages of the week. Of course we have to make money. I get all of that, but not at the sacrifice and not at the detriment of your values that are important.
Yes. Amen to that. Okay, a couple things that we do on this show. We ask if you have 3 tips that the ladies can take away with them today. By the way, you've already given us so many tips, but if there's 3 that you'd have to leave them with regards to confidence, because that is a big thing, especially in the narrative of like, for us with the SHEO platform and the workbooks and even this podcast, we can give you all the tools and say, this is how we use the tools. Use them how you want to use the tools. However, if you don't even believe that you can do it, right, it's an issue. So like, what are maybe 3 self-talk little tips that you can give them? Like, what are they?
I'll give 3 tips right now that can be a game changer for confidence and your career. Okay. The first one is related to confidence. It's called the 4 Bs, the 4 Bs to believing in you. Because the reality is that most of us have a bunch of beliefs that are in our head that don't belong to us. They were projected onto us that are now impacting how we show up in the world and how we see our worth. Okay. So these 4 Bs, what's the limiting belief that's getting in your way? By the way, we have a lot of them. So just anytime a limiting belief pops up, write it down. Okay. The second B is, what's the backstory of that belief? Where does that belief come from? What's the history of that belief? Was it given to you when you were a child? Did a former leader put this belief onto you and now you've been carrying it? Was it your first relationship where you got cheated on that now you felt like you weren't enough? And now in your career, you don't feel like you're enough, right? So what's the backstory? What's the behavior that it's causing, which is really important, because all of our beliefs are tied to a behavior. We behave in certain ways because of our belief system. So it could be you sitting in a meeting and not raising your hand because you're afraid that no one's going to listen to you. And so then that's your behavior, that you didn't raise your hand. It could be not sticking up for yourself in a relationship because you're afraid they're going to leave you. That's your belief, right? So what's the behavior? And then the fourth one is, now how do we break the belief so that we can shift the behavior? So that's the first step is the 4 Bs to believing in yourself to build confidence. The second step we've talked about, and that's creating a system so that you can actually activate the content that you're learning. I love podcasts. I love conferences. I love personal development. But the reality is that if you don't create a system to activate that knowledge, all that knowledge is going to do is sit on the shelf. It's not going to serve you. It goes back to exactly what I said in the beginning, where people gather a ton of degrees, a ton of certifications, a ton of knowledge, but they don't actually honor themselves with the time to create the transformation in themselves to use it. Yeah. It just sits there. So don't be a content consumer, be a content activator, and make time to do that. And then the third is your counsel. Jim Rohn said you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Yep. You need to do a check, an inventory check of the 5 people that are in your life. Are they kind? Are they supportive? Are they uplifting? Are they like-minded? Do they want to see you succeed? Or do they constantly suck energy out of you? Do they constantly create drama? Are they constantly bringing up all of these things that just don't make you feel good? Now, I'm not about cancel culture, so I'm not saying cancel them out of your life, but I'm definitely about creating some distance to serve you. And sometimes we are surrounded by people that just pull us down and we don't even realize it until we leave them. We're like, why am I so tired? Why do I do not feel good? You know what I mean? Because all of your energy was like expended in the drama and toxicity. So I'm a firm believer of like doing a check around who are the people that are around you, and the ones that are pulling you down that don't make you feel great, create some distance until they get it together.
Amen. So what about, let's talk really quickly in closing, the imposter syndrome. We ask every single guest about imposter syndrome. A lot of what you're talking about really helps to combat that. But what would you say? Do you still have it? Have you ever had it? I know I still struggle with it as I'm progressing here in this side of my career. What can you tell us about imposter syndrome?
Yeah, the biggest thing that I can say is it's not so much about having imposter syndrome or perfectionist mindset or not feeling enough. It's about whether or not it cripples you. I can say, like, I'm pretty positive every single person has had a thought once in their life that was like, maybe I shouldn't be here. You know what I mean? Or like, maybe like I'm in a room with people that are way more high functioning than me. Should I be in this room? Right? Like, I'm pretty sure every person has had that thought. The problem that we're seeing is not whether or not you have the thought, it's whether or not you let your behaviors and actions be shifted because of the thought. So I've definitely had feelings of not feeling enough. I've definitely had thoughts of like self-doubt. I've definitely had moments where I'm like, well, like I'm new in my career, but I recognize it's just a flippant thought.
That's it.
Just a flippant thought. And I don't let my thoughts sabotage my action. And I think that's like so important for people to understand, all of you that are listening. It's completely okay to have the thoughts. What's not okay is to let your thoughts sabotage your ability to take action and move forward. That's where we get in trouble. Tony Robbins, Michelle Obama, Oprah, they've all talked about like self-doubt and imposter syndrome, but they've also talked about how they recognize that it's like, that's just a thought. I'm not going to let it stop me. And I'm going to keep moving forward. And that's really the key.
It's just noise. It's just noise. I always say, try your best to turn down the volume on the noise.
Yeah.
Netta, tell them where to find you, what you have to offer them.
Thank you. Yeah, you're amazing. So I'd love for you to check us out. RiseUpForYou.com is the website. All of our social media is also at Rise Up For You, super simple. And we'd love to give you a free gift where we have all videos on public speaking, right? Presence, confidence, perfectionist mindset, building success, emotional intelligence, all completely free. You can go to riseupforyou.com/success and you'll get it right there at your fingertips. And then I'd love for you to follow me on social media at Lena NASSERDEEN. I'm sure you'll put it in the show notes because my last name is Middle Eastern and nice and long. But yeah, would love to connect, reach out to me. We're happy to support in any way we can.
Netta, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a wonderful gift to have you on. So many amazing gems and takeaways. Have a good one. Till next week, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.